Hi, my name is Joel Hamner with the law firm McCutcheon and Hamner, and now I want to tell you my story as to why I became a personal injury lawyer. Earlier I did a video and I talked about, what is a personal injury lawyer, and it kind of led into me working for an insurance company and me making the decision to change and begin to represent people. Well, there's a story I'm going to tell you that was the basis for my change. I represented a company in a workers' compensation case, and a gentleman who worked for a feed company in a county in Alabama had been injured on the job. What had happened is simply this. This gentleman had a 7th grade education. He couldn't read, really couldn't write, but all he did was drive a truck from a certain plant in Alabama to a place in Georgia and returned. He made the same delivery every day. He ran the same route every day. And that's all he did. And quite frankly, that was all he was qualified to do in today's world. But he took pride in it. He did a good job. He never was late for work. He never missed a day of work. He never laid out. He was the perfect employee. Well, unfortunately, this gentleman was returning from Carrollton, Georgia one day, and he was driving a truck when there was an accident that occurred in front of him. He did not have time to stop, and he hit a truck in front of him. Well, he was driving a slope-nosed box truck, which is a delivery truck. And the truck in front of him was a tractor-trailer truck, and it had a lift called a Tommy lift on it. His truck went under the Tommy lift, and it essentially took his right leg and turned it up toward his right shoulder, and his left leg and turned it up toward his left shoulder. The damage to this gentleman was so extensive that, quite frankly, his leg should have been amputated. But instead, they did what any of us would do, and they tried to save his legs. After numerous surgeries, he developed bone infections. It was just a horrendous accident. I was hired to defend his workers' compensation case. The insurance company hired me, and what they were concerned of is that this gentleman would be found under Alabama's Workers' Compensation Act permanently and totally disabled. And under Alabama's Workers' Compensation Act, if he was found totally disabled, he would draw a small check, $300, $350 as I recall, a week for the remainder of his life. And his life alone. It wouldn't be payable to his state, it wouldn't go to his wife, it was just for his life. And it was to help him to offset his cost and the fact that he could no longer work due to the nature of his injuries. And like I said, the injuries were horrible. Well, he hired a lawyer. And this lawyer was a general practice lawyer. He was a nice lawyer, real good guy, but he didn't practice workers' compensation as a matter of normal practice. He did a general practice. I think he primarily handled criminal cases and divorce issues. But he was their family lawyer, and they hired him, and he was to handle the workers' compensation case. Well, the insurance company hired me to defend the case. And in a workers' compensation case, what a defense lawyer tries to do is prove that your injuries aren't as severe as you claim them to be. Because the recovery under Alabama's Workers' Compensation Act is so ridiculously small anyway. That's what you're arguing about, is don't pay this man or this lady money. Or if you do, pay her a very limited amount. Well, there was no doubt in my mind when I got the case file from the insurance company, I knew by looking at this gentleman's age, at this gentleman's education, at his work history, and at the just horrible extent of his injuries, he was never going to work again. He was 52 years old. He could not read or write. He had only driven this truck for the vast majority of his life, and there was no one with these type of injuries that was ever going to hire this man to do anything. And so the argument, I knew when I reviewed the file, he was disabled and we should pay the money. That was the recommendation I made to the insurance company. I wrote a report and I said, based upon my evaluation of this file, we need to pay this gentleman X. They didn't want to do that. They wanted me to take on the defense of the claim. Well, through a process that we call discovery, that is where we get to go in and learn about you, learn about your family, learn about your medical history, I found out that his wife had inherited from her family a small little country general store. And when I mean country general store, it's like it was when I was a kid growing up. And they don't have them like this anymore, but They sold a few Cokes, and they sold a few groceries, and they sold gasoline, and they sold crickets and minnows and things for fishing, and that was it. It was a true old country store. Well, I found out that when his wife wasn't working at the store, he worked at the store. And he could run the cash register, and he mainly sat outside in a chair under an awning, and he still pumped everybody's gas. So he would get up, shuffle to the gas pump, pump their gas, and go sit back down. His lawyer came in and made this argument that, hey, my client can no longer work because he's totally disabled as a result of his on-the-job injuries, the damages to his legs, his hips, and it was horrific. I admit that. But my job was to prove he was able to work. His lawyer didn't really know how to present his case. And he didn't know that I had found out that this gentleman, this super nice man, worked with his wife at this little bitty small store. And we had video of this gentleman working at this store. So a lot of people would say, well, he's not disabled if he can work. Well, let me tell you what he did. Let me tell you what his work was. I told you that he sat in this chair under this little awning and would go pump gas. Well, so after the wreck, what he was able to do was sit in that chair, and he would take his walker when someone would come up for gas, and he'd use his walker to get over to the pump, and then he'd lean against the walker and pump their gas and greet them before they went into the store and paid. That's all he could do. And then he would shuffle back and sit down in his chair. That's all he could do. So we go to trial, and I present the video, and trial is over with, and the judge takes it under advisement, and the judge says he'll issue an order to us once he's made his decision. 2, 3, 4 months pass, and I'm driving to Birmingham because I have depositions in Birmingham. And I'm on my way back from the depositions later on that evening, and my cell phone at the time rings, and it's one of my law partners, and they're all excited. They've got the judge's decision in that case. And the judge found that this gentleman, this 52-year-old man, who could not read nor write, could barely even stand, the court found him not disabled because he thought he could work based on what I had done. So I come back to my office, and there on my desk is this humongous basket of stuff, of goodies and things that have been sent to me by this insurance company. And all I can think about, how wrong this is. I mean, how absolute morally wrong this is. And that's when it had to end. I couldn't do that anymore. I could not treat another human being that way. And I went home that night, and that's when Laura and I had the meeting, and I couldn't do it anymore. And now I've been doing this now almost 26 years, and that case happened 24 years ago. And I still to this day think maybe I ought to try and find that family and apologize to them. So you want to know why I do what I do and why I'm so passionate about it? It's because I see how people are treated when they don't have a good lawyer.